Well, good afternoon, everybody. My presentation just disappeared. We go. Good start. Don't know where that's gone. Good afternoon. My name is Duncan Spencer. I'm one of your moderators this afternoon. I work for an organisation called the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, based in the UK. However, our members are found in 132 different countries across the world, would you believe? So we have reach across the globe. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Lars Tornvig. I'm a director at Human House, and Human House is a major leadership and OSH consultancy in Denmark. I'm so happy to see all of you.
And the other face on the slide here is Michelle Garner-Jana, who's sitting at the front here. Her job is to note down what the speakers are saying and give us a little bit of a view from the audience about the key points that are raised during the session. So at the end of each session, she will be reminding us of what we've thought about and perhaps reflecting on one or two points. So we're going to run a session with two sets of speakers, and our first set of speakers you already see sitting in front of you just here. The speakers for the first session are Johnny Dryburgh and Christopher Spalek, and we have also Camilla Louise Ranport. So we will introduce them in more detail when we get to it. And for session two?
Yeah, for the second part, we have Pablo Nieto from Cervantes, sitting down there. We have Bernd Treichel from ISA. And finally, we have Felix Ni Tete Oku from the Asian Development Bank, sitting down there. Welcome.
So the way we were going to run this session is that we will hear from each of the speakers, who will have a short presentation to give to us all. We will then ask them a couple of questions from the moderator's chair, and at the end of each session will be your chance to be involved. So we have around the room, you see there are some flip charts with a question posed on it. So we would like audience participation to gather around these flip charts and see what you think, so you can add into the mix of the day. And all of these ideas will then be taken on board, and we'll be using it after the conference for different publications to learn from and to move forward. So it's your opportunity to influence the thinking as we move forwards, I think. So without further ado, let me introduce the session a little bit. So one of the things that Lars and I are really interested in is the metrics that are used in business today. Because you know, there is an old adage that says in English, what can be measured can be managed. Right? What does that mean? If it's difficult to measure, does that mean you can't manage it? That raises the question in my head. I'm always looking for the opposite questions to things. So one of the things that we want to explore a little bit in the first session is, well, how do you identify what metrics to use in your organization in order to be able to show that you are moving forward? And we'll start to explore things like leading and lagging indicators, predictive indicators. And then we will also examine, well, once you've got that data, what are you going to do with it? So if you're going to use the data, how do you use it effectively within your organization to influence and affect change as you move forward? So those are the two principal questions that we're looking at, and they will help us to scope across things like models of maturity, maybe changing of focus within an organization as the needs of the organization changes, how safety management changes over time. All of those things perhaps we will find our speakers thinking about as we move forward. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, who is Johnny Dryburgh. Sorry, it's Dryburgh, isn't it? I do apologize. Yeah. Who's the senior researcher and at the National Research Centre for the Working Environment. Johnny specialises in the prevention of work-related injuries with expertise in intervention studies, systematic reviews, and the translation of research into practice. His work examines how enterprises implement systematic occupational health and safety efforts and the role of certified management systems in there, and how safety and risk management can be embedded in daily operations, particularly through the use of leading and lagging indicators. His recent research has focused on the safety of young workers and the impact of digitization on workplace risk. Dr. Dyerborg also brings extensive experience from collaborations with national and international organizations and government bodies, including the European Commission and Eurostat. So over to you, Johnny. Thank you.
Thank you, and my presentation comes there. Excellent. Yeah. Is this working? Yeah. So thank you for this introduction. So I will go on to the subject. I will tell you about proactive risk management and using leading OSH indicators. I think we have already known indicators for many long times. Folk sayings is also a kind of leading indicators. I just give you an example here. Red sky at night, sailors' delight. Red sky in the morning, sailors' warning. So indicators is really integrated in folk sayings and how humans have always maybe tried to read signs to predict unwanted outcomes. And I have some more, and I think the audience here will also have, from your own language, your own culture, also interesting folk sayings like this. But we also use it in OSH, in occupational health and safety, to manage work and so on. We use indicators. But what is an OSH indicator, in fact? It is, I put it simple, a measure that provides insights into the state, progress, or effectiveness of workplace health and safety. It usually helps to guide preventive actions and also where you are in terms of your safety programs and so on. OSH indicators often remain stable, at least those indicators I work with on a more governmental level. We make them stable across sectors. They express what matters, for example, commitment to safety and health, engagement, safety climate maybe, and accidental injuries. Good indicators help manager, workers, authorities to prioritize efforts and allocate resources. This is like the map to navigate in the health and safety field. I think it's not something that should steer you, but it's something support decision-making in organization. But to ensure their validity and predictive power, OSH indicators must be grounded in evidence. And I give you an example on that later on. But what is an OSH metric? For me, there's a little overlap between these two concepts in a way, but we use metric in the sense that this is a more detailed metrics. We do, for example, specific quantifiable measures used to track the status or performance of workplace health and safety or well-being. It tells you how much or how well we do things in this organization. And it's in my experience that OSH metrics have to be sector sensitive in a way, because when we do metrics for an industrial workplace and after a construction sector site, you need to have a different metrics so they can be recognized and be useful for that practice. Predictive measures is a little another sort in a way, but we use it when we maybe put together different metrics to predict the possibility of an outcome in future. It is more like a forecast and less like something you use to manage day-to-day operations. Where indicators allow for direction and comparison, metrics provide specificity and relevance for the specific industry. But maybe this one is important for me, leading OSH indicators metrics, as you say here, because now I start with the use leading, means that indicators are used to influence future outcomes. This little arrow between these two circles here, for me, it is the essential here. And I just looked this up on the ChatGPT and so on. Always, this little arrow here is forgotten in a way, and this is maybe the most important here. So if you take safety training, for example, as I put on the left for you here, should then influence on the lost time incidents on the other side. But there need to be established some sort of causal relation here, so we have to have that. And that will also, it's not only in science, it's also in industries. If you cannot clearly have this link between an indicator you want to measure in your organization and an outcome, there should be this link, otherwise you measure something which are not correct, for example. OSH prioritization is more a management thing, which we also mentioned here. So these things have to be measured clearly, but it also have to be linked or be a causal relationship to the outcome you in fact want to maybe improve, whether it's accidents or something else. So, and also I have a very relative approach to what is an indicator, because an indicator could both be a leading or lagging. Taking here, it is you who decide what is a relationship, and in this relationship you define what is leading for you and what is lagging for you, but you have to prove there is this link between them. I will give you an example, a work example here. We did a national survey on the leading indicators of enterprises' OSH efforts. It's quite big. We asked about, I think it was 24,000 companies, and have a good picture of leading indicators here. We have this one is a prioritization of OSH, and there's some detailed metrics behind it. And we have integration of OSH into other business activities, as you also know from the ISO 45001. And this is the vertical, you can say, management indicators here. We also need the more horizontal one here, which is a specific, for example, handling of risk, how good is we doing that? Safety instruction, is it a useful indicator, leading indicators for less degrees of accidents? And we also have accident prevention more clearly. What we did here, we validated these ones, because first when you have validated them, we know that they have a causal link. The first one we validated was prioritization of OSH here. And it's quite interesting. So if management really prioritize OSH, what does that mean? We measure the difference between those who have the lowest prioritization to those who have the highest, and it gave more than 50% difference in these two groups. Integration of OSH activities into other workplace and management activities also gave a very high difference between those who are good at it and those who are less good at it. Safety instruction, we did that project for the National Labor Inspection Service. They were looked very much into this one, but unfortunately there were no causal link between safety instruction and the decrease of accidents. That surprised many, and therefore this is not a very good indicator to use, in fact. It's not a clear relationship here. But handling of concrete risk at workplaces, handling of concrete accident prevention measures show to be a very good indicator to work with. But the top priority is the prioritization of OSH from the management was the most important here. Okay, we put that into the proactive prevention matrix here, and we have the vertical one, systematic OSH efforts, and we have the horizontal one here, and you can have high score or low score on both dimensions, and you have 4 types of companies here. You have those who are inactive or both the vertical and the horizontal, and we call them inactive. There are also those who have high scores on both the vertical and the horizontal, and they are proactive. So they are good at good plans, planning, procedures, and so on, but they are also good at doing it in practice. And we put the inactive to one, the risk is 1 here, and then we suppose the others should have a lower risk. The first one is the reactive, those who react when things go wrong. they have no better safety than those who are inactive. In fact, maybe they sometimes do something very quickly, do something wrong, take resources from something that already are working well and use it for some very ad hoc type activities. But it's not significant, so they are the same level. Then we have the decoupled, the yellow, the other yellow up here. They are very good at making plans and procedures, but they are very bad at implementing it in practice. And that's a problem that many companies face. Implementation in practice, that's really a challenge. Then we have the proactive, and then we were happy when we saw those figures, because if you are high on these both dimensions, you can save 1/3 of your severe accidents that we measured in this study here. So all these four is just like a super, you can say, indicator of where companies are in the whole, in the total OSH management approach. We also can see in Denmark, for example, if this is a representative sample, this 1/3 of the companies is in the proactive, that's good, but there are also many in the inactive group, and there's a big problem for the labor inspector to move them to some of the others. Then we have the decoupled is not so much, but is many, but reactive is not so much, but decoupled is 1/4 of them. So many companies have difficulty to implement the policies and so on into practice. And then I just show you, have we put some extra indicators on, more on the psychosocial and chemical risk and so on, and to see how will it then work if you put other factors in, not only accidents, will it change the picture? But the distribution are more or less the same, but little more proactive, because now they can be good at doing psychosocial prevention and chemical prevention and maybe ergonomic prevention. So we have little more up there. And then you think, if you then think about a maturity, some companies in general are more mature. Are they then better than those we have seen here? This is the general average of all workplaces. Then we made the same statistical analysis, but only with companies who have been certified by OSH 18001 or ISO 45001. How will it then look? They were very happy because, in fact, it shows that then you have up about 70% are proactive. So the measure here, it measures that it goes in a correct direction. So those who really put a high emphasis on the management system, they are better on that level. They should be, because they are certified on that, but they are also better on the other way around, the horizontal, and have a much higher level of prevention of workers. So take-home messages here, the key distinction between leading and lagging indicator lies not in whether data are historical or real-time, but the causal relationship you put between your two indicators. That's the decisive thing, and that's not evaluated very well normally. Effective and valid indicators must demonstrate predictive validity in relation to the unwanted outcomes. Otherwise, companies do a lot of effort without having the gain they think they should have out of it in a way. Proactive safety can be understood as a high level of both systematic OSH efforts and specific OSH efforts, as illustrated in the proactive prevention matrix. So you need to have both dimensions of indicators in your use in the company. Otherwise, you will miss the effectiveness of your whole program. So, thank you for your attention.
Thank you Thank you very much, Johnny, for this very interesting presentation. I've seen some of your results before, but I always find them very inspiring, this translation from research findings to practical solutions or ideas. You have any ideas on leading indicators if you want to move to the proactive level? You have some ideas on this?
I think when you saw the matrix there, that I would start to that the systems are in order, because I think it's very difficult to move from a reactive just up to proactive. You have to think about working with the management system so they have them in place before they start with the more practical things, because otherwise you will choose maybe wrong solutions if you have, and that's simply to involve both management at all levels are involved here, so we have good decisions of what to do in the company before you start something. Otherwise the decisions can be wrong and maybe not supported by those who should support it also after the decisional phase, so to say. And that's the other one of the main problem is that you should have this, it should last at least half a year or 1 year, so you have to have strong support, and I think that's a big difference between many of the companies. Those who can sustain a high level on the vertical parameters here, they will move more in the proactive direction.
So you need to have the system in place.
Yeah, you have the system in place. It's very important. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Johnny. I think we need to keep track of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christopher Spalik. He is the Managing Director from a company called People Safely Solution. He's an experienced consultant. He's a systemic coach and a trainer, and I have more than 20 years of experience working with health and safety management, skilled in different kind of health and safety management systems, ISO 40001, coaching, behavior-based safety, learning management. So very experienced. We are so happy to see you here, Christopher. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here. I hope the presentation will work fine. First time I see it. Now that's the one I want to talk with you about. So what I'd like to talk with you about fits very, very much into what Johnny said. It's about you need to have the right KPIs at the right moment of your development. So first question, do you think it's a good idea to define your safe driving skills by counting the number of tickets you collect at the end of the year? But in fact, that's exactly the thing we are doing in many companies. Many companies just count the lost time incidents, and they just count the accidents after it happens, after it occurs. How do you run a system if you look backwards into the mirror? We said this before. It's like you drive your sports car, looking into the backward mirror and try to have a kind of direction. It doesn't work. It doesn't really work like that. And with these numbers come a lot of decisions. And this one is very close to my heart. There's a company I was auditing regularly, and they had 2 severe accidents. In one accident, a young guy, just 3 years with the company, lost the lower limb of his right arm. Another accident occurred shortly afterwards, where a person almost died from a falling object, but he was lucky to survive the whole thing. And now there was a huge pressure on the company to do something. And this doing something is something I see regularly in the consulting business, where people just grab the first thing they can do. And the first thing usually is, oh, let's do some training, because people didn't follow rules, so let's do some training. And therefore I write here, if you have only a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So they were asking, come on, let's do a training, let's do something. But if you go to root causes, and you said just now, you need to build up something before. So I ask, if the people are on the side, if they do something, you have trained them before, didn't you? Do you know the definition of madness? Madness means you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. So the people on site, they are trained already. So why do you think giving them another training will change the risk behavior? What I want to say, nobody comes to work to get hurt or hurt anybody else. I think we all can agree on this, that nobody comes to work to hurt themselves or hurt anybody else. So if this is true, then every unsafe behavior, everything we see outside must be a consequence of barriers we put into safe behavior. Sometimes safe behavior is just too difficult for us to do. There's a famous quote, a famous calculation, which we see also in coaching, and it's called performance equals your potential minus the interference. So when we talk now about this one, potential you have. Everybody has the potential to work safely. You select the people in the first place. But what is about all of the interferences? Do we really measure the right thing? And now I come to this training we just have measured. Oh, let's train more and more people. Is it the right thing we count here, or is it not the right thing? So what are we really measuring, and what should we measure in this content? We want to measure something to move forward. We want to measure for development. But the actions we are taking, they require a certain kind of structure. And I try to find a nice picture to have your birthday cake without the cake. Like this one. I need to move because I'm too tall, so I hope you can hear me. I try to find a picture with a cake here. So you build up something on top, but if you don't have the structure below, if you don't have the training, if you don't have the qualification of the people, it doesn't matter what you put on top. What do you want to train the people in? So just an awareness training, be careful. Everybody wants to be careful. Everybody wants to come home safely. So it doesn't really matter to put another awareness training on top. So we need to have the structure below, and we need to measure what is really needed in this specific moment. And specific moment means also development of an organization. There are different ways how we can proceed with this. Johnny, you just mentioned a lot of KPIs organizations are using. There are countless of them. But it's not just only selecting any of these KPIs. You need to take the right one in the right context. And one thing we use for context is, for example, the Bradley curve. There are different models out there which describe the culture of an organization. The Bradley curve is very widely accepted. So there are different ways how you can deal with safety. You can be reactive, meaning after an accident, you suddenly start to do something about it. You can be dependent. So some supervisors run around and always point out, oh, please wear the safety helmet, wear some glasses. This is a dependent organization. You have independent organizations which have a high individual competency on the people, and you have an interdependent or supportive organization where people interact with each other, where they generate ideas, where they build up something together. That's an accepted way for describing safety culture. But depending on which cultural level you are, your focus will change, and also your KPIs have to adjust to this one. Same like with road. I cannot use the same driving style on an icy road like in a desert or on a highway or in a city. So we need to change our focus depending on the cultural level we are in. So let's have a look at this one. What is our focus? The focus of an organization in a reactive phase is usually legal compliance. So you follow what is written in the law. And then you have the inspectors coming to you, check if you follow the law. But really, that's the very, very basic process of health and safety management. If you want to go further, you go to process adherence. And that's the thing what we usually find in ISO standards. ISO standards like 45001 or similar, you have a standard, you roll this one out, and usually one or two guys run around the company and point out what you have to follow. That's the thing of process adherence. And then later on you build on individual competency. You build on competency on the people so that they can make their own decisions, have awareness of risks and risk assessments, they have awareness of the instructions, and then furthermore you go to team collaboration. You build up interaction so that more and more people carry the load of safety management. That's the latest stage of this Bradley curve. ISO readiness, as I said, is only between the reactive and dependent phase. So just having an ISO standard will not necessarily tell you you're a good company. Let's talk about KPIs, which usually go along the different phases of the curve. In the legal compliance area, you do recordable cases, as the name said. You have to record them. And in Germany, we have a law which says after 3 days of being away from work, you need to record this accident. And some companies then, when I audit them, say, oh, we are really one step further. We count now from the first day on. And it's still a lagging indicator. It really doesn't change anything. Even if you start counting near misses, which some people already attribute to the process adherence of the second phase, a near miss, also something happened already. So it's also after the event. If you want to go ahead of the curve, you need to have something which is leading, something which happens before the accident itself occurs. And that's exactly what Johnny just said. It can be training rate, ergonomic scores, leadership work, 5S scores, or similar things. But in fact, think further. You don't want to have training rates. You don't want to have 100% of your people trained. Nobody's interested in it. You want to have a behavioral change. You want that the people in the shop floor are able to work safely. So just because you train them, it doesn't make anything better. You need to have an effective training. So you need to have an effectiveness check behind of that. And then we go further. We go to a level 3 of the Bradley curve, for example, where we evaluate, are we really effective in the field with our training? I come back to the one accident or to this company example I just gave to you ahead of time. If I train the people and make an awareness training, what will be the change in the company later on? We really don't know. Because ask yourself, what was trained before? How effective was that? How good were the supervisors? How good was the organization? Did anybody give a feedback about positive, safe behavior, or did correct, unsafe behavior? If we did not have these things, then training rate will not change anything. So in this level 3 we have here, we look for individual competency. And here we find BBS, behavior-based safety, for example, participation rates, how much do the people adhere to last-minute risk assessments. But one thing which is very close to me is identifying barriers. And that's exactly the thing from before. What is hindering us to work safely? Because I don't have anything against working safely. But you just mentioned something about a work instruction. And with digitalization, people think just putting it online makes it a digital process, which is absolutely not true. But it's easy to maintain. So you have a work instruction, and you ask the people to follow on this work instruction. Can you count how many times you need to click on a button somewhere to get to this work instruction? First, you need to open your iPad or the computer, you need to put in your name, you need to go to the next level, find on SharePoint somewhere the folder, go deeper and deeper and deeper. You will never, ever do this in private life. If you want to find information on Google, you give yourself 3 clicks. But if you ask for yourself for 20, 30 clicks to come up to work instruction, it is not effective. And this is a barrier we can identify and where we look into a safe culture. And then later on, we want to eliminate these barriers. This is a team effort. So if you look for engagement, that's a good number we can use if we are working on the level 4. So just having the KPI by itself is not necessarily helping you. You need to build up the structure before. If you don't have the structure, the KPI doesn't help. What do I want to do with an engagement score if I don't have the processes and the infrastructure, the resources already in place? So I need to look a little bit deeper into it. We do this assessment with a Bradley curve, and safety and culture performance, you can link it in a way to ISO 45000 standards, but just telling about, for example, training. How do you training? You can do training in a very reactive way. You just download something from a provider, buy a training, and ask everybody to look at the PowerPoint. Or you create a training on the shop floor with the people together so that the team itself creates training. And so every of these, let's call them cultural elements, can reach from a very reactive to a very interdependent stage on this Bradley curve. And I think you need to understand first where you are before you start implementing new KPIs or processes. You need to build up some structure before you go one step further. And that's one thing one of my former site managers said to me, oh, Bradley curve is great. Can we just immediately jump to level 4? No, you cannot. You need to build up some structure before. And there's one thing, which we say also in German, grass doesn't grow faster just because you pull on it. So you need to build up the structure. Some things just need a little bit of time. Give it the time. Understand where you are in this one very specific moment. And when you understood where you are, you can go for the next step, and then you can look for the next KPIs. So just selecting a nice KPI will not necessarily help you. What I ask you now to do, and that's my last slide here, is stop reporting what is easy to report. Start acting, find the right numbers and make the decisions on the real things which will change the safety of the workers on the shop floor, and not just run for training in the first place, but do the things which really matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christopher. There was a great deal of resonance in that for me from my own experience of being a consultant and seeing how different organizations react to KPIs. We always used to talk about the difference between outputs, outcomes, and impact. You know, so if you look at it, something like training, it's very easy from a training point of view to say the number of courses that you've had and then use that as a KPI, but it's an output. Or you could say, okay, well, through this training, we've now got 50 people that are trained in X, Y, and Z. No, that's an outcome. What you really want to know and what you really want to measure is the impact that has. So how has those people actually changed their behavior, which has then led to a difference in performance? And it's very difficult to be able to set a KPI around that, but that's what we have to get smarter at I think in our profession. So that leads me to a question for you, which is, do you find in your experience of working with companies that they can sometimes be too narrow with the KPIs that they're looking at? Do they kind of focus on one thing and then draw too many evaluations from it without substance, perhaps?
Yes, I think some companies are very rigid on their KPIs because lost time incident is a well-accepted standard and it's easy to measure. And this easiness of measurement is what people drive. Okay, just let's take lost time incident rates. And they are going back from the effort to really find out what is helping me to move forward. So we take the first thing. This morning there was a session and somebody also said, oh, we find some discrepancies with requirements, or just let's put any kind of training on it. And they say, okay, now we trained everybody and now everything will be good. But that's not the case. So I think people need to be able to criticize themselves in a certain way, to challenge themselves if their system is adequate and is really supporting this KPI. So the example I just mentioned to you about these two accidents in the one company over there, I asked them, come on, before we go in any kind of training, let us have an assessment. Let us find out where you are, where you really need to change anything, where you need to build up structure. If a leader does not know what's expected from them, they will not act accordingly. So it doesn't help if I train his or her employees afterwards how to work safely if the leader has no tools how to provide feedback, how to approach them, or to do any of these things. I believe some people are just afraid to get the mirror and to see you need really to build up a lot of structure before we can implement the next step. And then people are avoiding having more detailed or more meaningful KPIs. And because it's also something new. People like to rely on something which is used many, many times over and over again. But if you want to do something new, you need to go a bold step ahead sometimes. And many companies don't want to do that. They want to stick with what you have always done. Like, you know this sentence? If you don't know what to buy, you buy an IBM. So because there you don't make a mistake. And that's the same thing with the consultant companies. I also see regularly, they don't want to go to me, they want to go to one of the big ones. But that's a different story.
So very quickly, because we must move on, but do you have any pointers for us in how you might measure changes in culture or changes in behavior of a workforce?
Yes, what I said to you with this Bradley curve thing, we have a lot of clients where we make an in-depth assessment, and this assessment is not a paper exercise. It's going on the shop floor, talking with the people through all of the levels, and to find out how is safety really, how close is it to your hearts? Do you have the tools in place which will help you to move safety forward? And then we make a really in-depth talking assessment with the companies, and that helped them. So we have some examples of this one where we have supported change over the years. So I'm very confident that what I just showed to you is a helpful tool.
Dankeschön, Christopher.
Thank you.
Let's move on. I'm very happy to introduce the next presenter. This being a World Assembly for OSH professionals. It's good to have a very experienced OSH professional on stage, I think. And Camilla Ransfast, who is Global Senior Director in Health, Safety and Environment at Rockwool, one of the large Danish international companies, having more than 25 years of experience from similar roles in other large Danish international companies. She is very skilled both at the strategic level, but also at the operational level. So I'm very happy to see you on stage, Camilla. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm much shorter apparently than my colleagues. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the practical angle of working with these KPIs. I come from a big company, so this is how we do it in everyday life. So not so much theory, but more practical part. Just to say, I come from Rockwool. We produce high-performing solution that helps create energy-efficient, fire-safe, and circular buildings and communities. And what we work with is that we have 42 factories in 23 countries around the world. So this is my, everyday life. Just to say, if nobody knows what Rockwool is, it is building isolation made out of stone. And I work with health, safety, and environment. So, of course, I like some of the things that is embedded in Rockwool isolation. Not that we should talk too much about it, but it's about that it's actually circular when you work with environment, that when you tear down a house, you can take all the stone wool isolation, you can send it back to us, we can put it back into our ovens, we can melt it, and we can make new, and we can do it again and again and again. So I think that's a very nice thing. And then when it comes to the health and safety part, we have the acoustic part about it. This about schools, hospitals, whatever, that you actually have a nice working environment because it's not so noisy. But enough about Rockwool. So health safety of our workforce, we have about 12,500 employees, 88 different nationalities. And of course, we also take care of all our contractors coming on site. We talked a lot about management system. We have an internal management system in Rockwool on group level, which is certifiable by ISO 45001. About half of our companies or factories are certified. The other half are not, but they still have the system. It's a little bit about what the market wants, right? And then I want to talk to you a little bit about in 2024, this is, I think I need to do like you. I cannot move at all. In 2024, we made this new strategy called Rockwool House of Safety, which we based on the Vision Zero framework. And we were trying to actually maybe do a little bit, not as there was talk so much about here, because we actually think that we can use our lacking indicators to something, that we actually can use some of the data we have had for many, many years. We have these goals: 0 fatalities, 0 serious incidents or accidents. I think that is pretty common. You will have them in a lot of companies. Those are the ones we report externally. Why is that? That is because that is the ones you get compared to with every other companies. That doesn't mean we don't have internally leading indicators, but I don't believe we ever will move away from the lagging as long as those are the only ones that are in the CSRD and all the other frameworks that we are measured up against. So we just have to live with them. But then we were also like, okay, then how can we live with them? What can we do? What can we use them for? And we have this accident reporting system that we have had since 2015, where all the data had gone in with all the lost time incidents, the incident without lost time, all the near misses, all the good catches. So I think as many companies, all the data went in and nothing much went out. If we had something serious, if we had a high potential thing, of course we shared it around all our factories and asked them to make actions for this not happening again. But we didn't really use it for more. So we were talking about maybe how could we use it to trend a bit more. So we make this Rockwool House of Safety. I'm going to take you to a little bit about the data track and the safety leadership training. Then we also have something on machine safety and safety tools. We have very manual, very machine-heavy industry, but that's not today. So what did we do? We actually took all our data where we have 63 different root causes that you can choose when you have an accident. And then we said, how can we link that up against Vision Zero? So we took all these root causes and then we linked them into each of the principles and then we funneled them down. So we could say something about where do we see, within which principles do we see most LTIs, lost time incidents, normal incidents, good catches, near misses, where can we see there is an issue or where we might gain something from working with Vision Zero. Then we also had a questionnaire track, and that was both that we could go out and ask some questions to our employees, but we also needed that, or we could go out and interview them, whatever came first. But what we found out was when we looked at all the lacking data, it actually compared very well with when we asked our employees or when we interviewed them. It was the same things coming up. What we could also see is we made this report. We made a report on group level. We made a report for all the countries. And then we made a report for all the factories. First thing we could see is that when we looked at the lost time incident, the incident without lost time, and the near misses, they actually collide very well. The areas we had problems in was also the areas where we have near misses. That might be obvious, but it was nice to see. What we also could do was we could say, okay, if we have a problem with identifying hazards and control risk, point number 2, then what would be the most common root causes, maybe something with confined space working, and then where actually in the factory do we have these issues. And using the data for many years, it actually turned out we both compared data for 6 years and then for data for 2025, and it still matches. So we could be very targeted on saying, instead of smearing all over Rockwool or all over a factory, you just need to work with something. Then we could go down and we could be very specific for each area, saying, where is it you might have a challenge? Of course, we also talked to the people, and maybe in a few cases we had misunderstood something that happens with data, but in 99% of the cases, they were like, yeah, this is where we do see an issue. So we made these reports. They got this incident analysis from data. And again, I come from Rockwool. It's an engineering company. They love data. So if you can talk data, you can get them to talk. And that's also a lot of important stuff, right? Then we also have an employee survey where we also ask 4 questions about safety every year. They also get this data. And then we talk to them about the preconditions within the point from Vision Zero, which preconditions should be in place, which processes, safety processes should be in place, and then which KPIs should they work with, saying where are the holes in the cheese, where are some of the preconditions that might not work, which of the processes do you might not have in place, and then let's make the KPIs there. And I just took with me an example, also a little bit about how we have involved. It is the manager's safety walk and talk. We made a way to go out and have management safety walk and talk against the Vision Zero principles. So normally, a couple of years ago, we would do the first 3. Do we have a procedure in place? Check, yes we have. Have we trained people? Check, yes we have. Do they do them? Yes, we have a Kaizen board. We ask every morning, did you do your safety work? Happy days, everybody did the safety works, fine. And normally we would end there. But then we were also just about, okay, how do we get this extra part around from the Plan, Do, Check, Act to make sure it actually works? So now we have this about, do we follow up? If we find something, do we actually go out and do something about it? Do we learn something from it? And then when we follow up, where are we on the ERIC level? Our best friend is about eliminate before control, not just go out and say, oh, you need some training or you need some PPE, right? That is the easy way of doing it, right? And then in the end, do we share this knowledge across with the good practices, and do we go back and maybe change something in these? I mean, we, from the best effort of our heart, we made these safety walk and talk, but we might have misunderstood something, or we might need to do something better. So making this Plan, Do, Check, Act working. And that is an example for one of the KPIs we have been using. Then we have Rockwool House of Safety and leadership training, because we do believe you have to start with the leadership. And it's, now you had this comment about training, but it is more about cultural awareness. The way we do it is we, of course, have some onboarding of our management. Then we have a questionnaire, which also, we just call it a questionnaire, but it could also be interviews. Out in all the department, we have all the data. Then every manager get their own feedback. Then they align. That is one of the things we have learned. It is very, very important when you have management, when you get them together in a factory, in a place like Rockwool, who has existed for many, many years, and we always have safety first, and if it's not safe, it's not worth doing, and all these, and then you get the managers together, and then they're not aligned at all about what does safety first actually mean. What does it mean if it's not safe, it's not worth doing? So having this alignment, where do we agree? How do we act as a team? Then we have, together actually with Human House, made these 8 modules of safety leadership training, also built on Vision Zero. And I think the cool part about this is it takes about a year to go through it. Between every course or every module, you put up again a KPI for the managers saying, what do you specifically need to work with within this model out in your department? And then they get time to do it. And then they come back, and it's not just did you do it or didn't you do it, but how did you do it, what worked, what didn't work, could we measure this in the KPIs? And then, of course, our hope is that we can repeat the questionnaire about a year and a half after and then see something. And one of the factories who did this was actually, they put a KPI in general on the factory on last minute risk assessment. And they asked people in this questionnaire, do you do last minute risk assessment? And why don't you? And people are like, we're too busy, and I know, and I don't see any danger. And they had, I think it was about 50% who said, yes, we always do last minute risk assessment. And their target KPI is they want over 70% to answer yes the next time. I think it's going to be interesting to see if we reach it, but at least that's what we're trying to do. So we will never get away from the lagging indicators, but we try to use the data preventively instead of just having it lying nicely in a system. I think that was what I wanted to share from the practical point of view.
Thank you very much, Camilla. I think very inspiring. Couple of questions. We have time for this as well. I think there's been a lot of talk from all 3 of you about the importance of getting management engaged in this. And of course, we have the top management. And if they are focusing on lagging indicators, because that's what they need to report to their boards or their investors, can you tell us a little about the challenges in getting leading KPIs accepted by top management?
Yeah, they focus on the lagging. I'm sorry, I just have to say, and I don't think I'm the only company where they do, but I think when you are able to, at least in our case, give them some data-driven evidence on what would be good to do to drive the lagging indicators down, because they want it to go down, right? Then we start to talk the same language when we can say, but we can see in our data that this is where we have a challenge, this is what we need to do something about, and it's scientifically proved, then it's getting much more easy. So now they're actually also starting to ask for it, saying we don't just want the report on the lagging, we also want to know what's going on the leading. You're never going to see them in our sustainability report. Maybe we write something nice about them, but it is something that we use internally, but they are very aware of it, that we should work with them and how mature we are, coming back to if you use the Bradley curve or whatever you use, but it's about also not trying to be more mature. We have had factories that, I mean, they had so many things in place that they were drowning, right? But they were simply not on the right level. They were too immature to what they were trying to do. They were trying to jump the fence. So this about also getting the board to understand we might not be just as long as you want us, but if given us time, we will move there, right? Was that an answer?
It was an answer, and if I understood it correctly, some highlights of this is speaking management language.
Yes.
They understand, and research-based evidence.
Yeah.
It's difficult to argue against.
And then mixing it, not trying to, I started out trying to fight with them. Oh, we should not have this lagging indicator. No, don't do it. Just accept it. And then also move in the leading ones while you're doing it. Then it works.
And I think the combination that Johnny mentions as well, this combination of lagging and leading.
Yeah.
And as Christopher mentioned as well, looking at what do we want to reduce and how can we do that, this combination. Thank you very much, Camilla.
So, being at a health and safety workshop, You know, it's, I have to say, it's very bad for you to be sat still for such a length of time. So now is your chance to actually have your say in this really important topic. So what we've done is, around the room, we've posed 3 different questions, and we would really genuinely love to have your views on what you think about these questions. So over here, we have a question which says, should health and safety data and its analysis be presented differently to different audiences within the organization? So what we want to know is that, you know, we're taking all of these measurements, but do you use them in different ways to talk to the workforce, to talk to the supervisory level, to talk to the board? You know, how do you represent that kind of information in a way that's going to make them sit up and take notice? And then next over here, we have a question which says, the distinction between leading and lagging indicators came originally from economic analysis. That's where the terms arose. Do they work for occupational health and safety? So we've heard a little bit from our speakers today about the difficulties that people have with the term leading and lagging indicator. So is it something that actually works for us, or should maybe we try some different language? I don't know. And then the last question over here is, why do organizations rely so heavily on lagging indicators, and what makes it so difficult to define meaningful, actionable leading indicators? So those are your 3 questions. And we'd love you to have a go at answering those and giving your views on each of those. So please get up and move around. There are pens on the board where you can write your comments on the board. In English, please, if you don't mind, because we have to do the analysis of this afterwards. So we're going to take this information away, and then when we do some publications after this conference, then your views will be used and expressed in hopefully trying to take this important topic forward as a conversation. So we'll spend around 10 minutes doing this, and then we will hear from Michelle, who will give us a wash-up from the first session. So please get up and meet people and have a chat and see what you think about the answers to these questions. Thank you. That's it. Okay. Nice to see you.
过去那边装更好。
We'll give you another minute or so to put your last comments down on the sheets. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to resume your seats. And we'll just do a quick sum up over on these flip charts to see what you've been thinking. And then I'll hand over to Michelle, who'll do a wrap up of this session. So the question over here is, should health and safety data and its analysis be presented differently to different audiences? And it seems to be a resounding yes, apart from one person who said no, consistency matters. So that's interesting for me. But certainly the general consensus is that it's the messages that are most important, but you might want to put the messages over in slightly different ways to different people, which is something for us to go and think about. What have we got over here, Lars? Have we got another resounding yes? So the distinction between leading and lagging indicators came from economic analysis. Do they work for occupational health and safety? So there's a yes and there's a not yet until we can come up with meaningful objective data and indicators. And better than nothing, but still needs clarification and discussion. So that very much for me reflects the fact of where many organizations are at the moment, and many of the IOSH members. We have over 50,000 IOSH members, and they're all, that reflects very much their sentiment. Yeah, it's the how and why it needs to be, yeah, absolutely yes, yeah. And then the last question over here, why do organizations rely so heavily on lagging indicators, and what makes it difficult to define meaningful and actionable leading indicators? So we've got some indication around, well, history. So maybe this is the way we've always done it, and we've not challenged that yet, maybe. Benchmarking can be difficult, because I know when I worked in retail in the UK, I tried to benchmark the health and safety performance of my supermarket with the other supermarkets. Terribly difficult, because we all captured data in different ways. We all categorized data in different ways. So trying to benchmark was very difficult indeed. In fact, the only way we could do it was benchmarking our evaluation of our own data. So maybe there's something there. And lack of manpower, maybe lagging indicators are not necessarily understood properly, maybe. Learning indicators are difficult, leading indicators are difficult because we only know how to measure how unsafe we are. Now that's an interesting thought. Do you want to add anything, Lars? Okay, so without further ado then, with this session, what we'll do is we'll just hand over to Michelle, who will just wrap up this first session, and then we'll break for 10 minutes so that you can go and have a visit to the restroom or grab a drink or something, and then we will resume with our second session. So do come back. We've got another 3 excellent speakers this afternoon who are going to be taking these ideas on even a stage further. So thank you very much for your participation, and we'll see you after that. So Michelle, please.
All right, I will try and make this quick so that you can continue to your break. I think Johnny, Christopher, and Camilla all did an excellent job of talking about leading indicators from 3 different perspectives, right? So from a research, from a consultant, and from a practical perspective. So I think that was a very insightful discussion. So from Johnny in the first session, what stood out to me and what I really appreciated is the statistical analysis. I'm a data person, and it's not often that you hear about the statistical correlation of leading indicators with lagging indicators. So I thought it was fantastic that that data was available and that you had such strong correlations on several of the indicators there. I also really appreciated and hadn't thought about it in the terms of systemic indicators versus the specific effort. And I think that's a really smart way to approach it. And it was interesting that the correlations were different, for each. So, and then, finally, I really appreciated the quadrants that indicated how much of an improvement you could have if you had high levels on both the systemic and the specific effort portions. So that was really great. From Christopher, I mentioned, I really appreciated the Bradley curve with the leading indicators on top of it. I think that was a really different way to consider it and a smart approach to think about interdependence and what more we can do there. And the typical KPIs around that. And I also really appreciated one of your last statements around, well, two things, changing the context and changing the focus, because I think that's very true. You can't necessarily apply the same leading indicators across a suite of actions or of organizational performance. And I like the analogy that you used with the driving on different roads there. Also the stop reporting and start acting. So really understanding what's driving your lagging indicators and determining your leading indicators from there. Camilla, your practical approach was definitely fully appreciated. Just to give you a little bit of background, so I'm currently the Chief Experience Officer and co-founder for the What Works Institute. We're based in the United States. Before this life, which I just started about a year ago, I worked at Cummins Engine Company for about 28 years, and the last 15 of those I led global EHS for the organization. So I fully appreciate hearing about how you apply some of the concepts around leading indicators and how you make that work. So your practical angle there I thought was great. And it's a bold statement to get in front of a room full of safety professionals and say, we're never going to get away from lagging indicators. And I agree with you. Because I think you have to have the lagging indicators for a few reasons. One, those are the things that are similar and allow you comparison against different organizations. But also, lagging indicators aren't a four-letter word. Lagging indicator doesn't have to be incident rate or lost time. A lagging indicator can be not being in compliance or a behavior that is unsafe, for example. So I don't think you can necessarily have leading indicators without lagging, because you have to know whether or not your leading indicators are effective, right? So, and I think you really drove that point home very well. When I think about the common threads throughout the three, there were a few points that came up for me. The causal relationship that I know you focused on in the first discussion. I think that was again a common theme throughout, that when we're thinking about leading indicators, each presenter talked about how you have to have a causal relationship with the output. Otherwise, you don't know if you're wasting your time or if you're doing something that's making an improvement, right? And then I think another thing that was common across the three, it sounds like there's no magic bullet, right? There's not one leading indicator that's going to be the end-all be-all for every organization. It really depends on what your challenges are and what you need to work on. So, and I think Camilla mentioned this very well. Even within one organization, there's not necessarily one leading indicator that works across the cloth for everyone. And then finally, I think a common theme was around, determining when you're thinking about leading indicators, it's important to think about what needs to change. What are you doing that needs improvement? And what are the actions that are leading to that outcome that you don't want? And then what are the actions that would lead to improving that? And that's how you determine your leading indicator. It's not just picking something, that worked for another organization. It's really determining what are those behaviors and things that you need to change, and how can you measure process improvements to get there. So thank you very much, all three of the presenters. I think you did a wonderful job.
So thank you very much, everybody. We're going to take a short break now, and we will come back at 3:30, please, 3:30, and we'll resume with three excellent speakers, Pablo Nieto, Bernd Triekel, Felix Nihi. So please do come back for more of the same. Thank you.
So it's time. Let's move on to part two. We have a headline calling it Leading with OSH Metrics, Stakeholders, Society and Tech Futures. And we have two questions in this part that we will focusing on. Who are demanding metrics, measurements, and why? and what methods are now available for metric measurements. The first speaker, I think Duncan will introduce.
Thank you, Lars. So our first speaker is Pablo Nieto. Pablo is based in Barcelona, currently the CFO at Sabentis. He brings experience from previous roles at ORP Foundation International, EasyTech Global in Chile, and EasyTech Global and DSLBD. Yeah, there we go. So please, Pablo, please take the stand and give us your presentation. I know that Pablo is going to have to rush off to another presentation after this, so I'm also conscious of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Let's see. As we said, I'm going to do a presentation. Mainly, I will be talking about a platform that we have, that it's called Sabentis, and I will show you on regards of how to get the data and so on, the different ways that we are doing it, and it may be interesting for you guys. But first, I would like to start with a question, who from the audience doesn't know this guy? Raise your hand, please. One? Who knows him? You cannot see him. His name is Roming Pang, which maybe doesn't tell you much. Well, so turns out it's quite interesting because this guy has just been hired by Meta. He used to work at Apple for 200 million euros paycheck, which is kind of crazy. To put it into perspective, if we talk about our football players, he will be the second one, just right after Cristiano Ronaldo, which is kind of amazing thing, no? Well, so this should give. Okay, perfect. So this should give you already an idea of what are we heading to, no? Where these guys are start getting higher and higher paychecks. If we ask why is it that one single person will cost that much? Well, there's several reasons, of course. First one, drama, marketing, manipulating the stock market. We have seen, of course, that after all these titles, the stocks of Meta in this case, they always rise. So that's a little bit of it. Not that much as the strategic of importance of artificial intelligence for absolutely every single market. Of course, now I'm making a little bit of the context of and data and so on. Later on, we will go on the health and safety matters. But at every single level, in every single company, regardless of what you are doing, for instance, if we talk about the chef, the Michelin star chef, they are using artificial intelligence in order to come up with new recipes and so on. So this is very important. Third, there was a sentence from Steve Jobs, which it was very interesting. That is you can never overpay on software. What does it mean? For talent talking. What does it mean? Let's say from the best hot dog that you have and the worst hot dog that you have, it may be that it's 3 times better, 4 times better. But the first software developer that you can have, compared to the worst one, it could be 1,000 times, 2,000 times. And also because all those data and how you use them later on. So and those who are the very best ones, it doesn't matter how much it costs, you really need to have them. And fourth, because artificial intelligence is equal magic. And I will show you now what do I mean about that. Okay, here there's a video. It's a little bit long, but long story short, this is an app. There's many of those ones. This is called Famous AI. What I did is I just put the image of the global health and safety. I put a little script that I created with ChatGPT, and I asked him, hey, can you make me an app for this? And what it will be interesting, it takes a little bit, it takes 2-3 minutes, I hope, because I asked them to speed it up. By the way, if you want to speed up a video, you can do it with clideo.com, but you have to do the payment in order to get the watermark off. I did not do that, okay? So here in few more seconds, I'm hoping, what the artificial intelligence right now is doing is collecting the data. I just make with a sentence is, hey, I would like to have a quiz app that we can use in order to have some questions and so on. I actually have it, but they told me that there's no internet connection, as you can see. So here you have some of the questions. You can launch it, you can preview it, but the most important thing, you can see the code. And if you can see the code, that means you can download the code, and then you can change it and fix it. So it means the majority of the app is already done in less than 1 minute without having a single one coder, and later on you get one coder and you ask him, hey, help me out to make it a little bit better. Okay, this is one example. I can give you 1,000 examples, like, because like whenever I show it first to my dad, he was like, oh, but like make me now an app of like carbon dioxide. What is my footprint? What is my, and we make several, and it works really good. And of course, like later on, you can like do some changes, adaptations in order to keep on going. Okay, and here I would like to play a video. I hope the audio works. Him, like you may know him, co-founder of ChatGPT.
We're going to see 10-person billion-dollar companies pretty soon, like billion-dollar valuations. And the thing that in my little like group chat with my like tech CEO friends, there's this betting pool for the first year that there's a one-person billion-dollar company, which would have been like unimaginable without AI, and now will happen.
So, long story short, he's saying one person, $1 billion company. But the question that we all have is like, how? How does it work? Well, it works with two main things. First one is the AI agents that you may have been hearing about, and the second one is the automatization. Like there's like several tools that you can do to use that, but it's like for instance, N8N is an automatization workflow tool that it works really good. And I will like to explain very easily like what's the difference in between artificial intelligence and automatization, right? So first you have the trigger. The trigger, really simple, is the waking up. What does it do? Like for instance, every Friday at 9 a.m. you have to do something. Or whenever you get a WhatsApp call, you have to do something. Or if you get like whatever, like a form or a message from Gmail, you have to do something. Second, the action in itself. In the action in itself, before, what we had until now, it was something that it was automatic, but it will always be the same. So for instance, we say post every Friday at 9, happy Friday on LinkedIn. But regardless what is happening on Friday, he's gonna be posting this. And here is the magic. This is the artificial intelligence agents. What is the difference with them? That those ones, they will check, they will scan, and they will see if it makes sense to post this or not. In regards of what? So for instance, let's say that there have been a terrorist attack or something like this. You are not gonna be posting that. You will be, sorry, or I hope that you're good, and so on. And after this, you will get the result. The result before, it was that it was getting very upsetting or very like on repeat all the time. And right now, it's like it gets more connected with the audience, it knows more things. But all of these, it's just like on regards of one single thing that is what we have been talking about all this time, which is the data. No? And this data is the one that is gonna, like here is like a workflow where you see the artificial intelligence, and there's three main things that they have, which is like the chat model that you are using in this case, for instance, the memory, which is the very important thing, is like what he knows and which information are we giving to him, and the tools that it can use to the automatization. But the most important thing, we have been saying all that, is data. Best data, best action, equal best result. Like, and what's, now that I link it with my presentation, why are we good at this? Well, our philosophy divides on three main points. The first one is collecting data related to health and safety. And how we do that? Well, we have been doing it for 20 years. We have 45 special models, which is like a broad approach where we have ergonomics, but we will also have like things related to health and care and so on. So you have different sort of data, but all regarded on like reducing the accidents. And we have this with over 150,000 companies and 8 million workers. We have been collecting this data for 20 years. We have been like working on it and so on. What is the easiest way and the best way to collect it? It's not through surveys, of course, it's through sensors. Like as much sensors you can have, in many places that you can have it, better data you will have. You know, because the sensors cannot lie. Like once you say this is what you are gonna do, like this is the data you are gonna provide me, so you provide it like this. How do we do? Well, like we have different alliances, no? Because of course we cannot reach to have all those sensors. So for one of the alliances that we have is together with Bosch, and they have like a setup of like many sensors that we are using to collecting different data. Here is an example of how we collect the data. This is a real example. Like you will see that our platform have different sort of visions and different sort of like, because here we were asking the question, no? How to show it. Like it's not the same if I'm showing the data to my CEO, that if I'm showing the data to a worker and like which information do I need, so we have different sort of platforms that interact in between all of them, but at the end it's one single brain that works for everything, but I will show it in different ways. The second part that we have is the automatization, no? This part of the artificial intelligence that we are working. Because at the end of the day, like first I get the data, second I have to work on it, but the issue is like if I have to work myself, it takes so long. So we have used this artificial intelligence in many of those models, so it does it like automatically and we don't have to be working on it. So here is an example, very easy example. Here is gonna be, this is like one of the parts from ergonomics. A task is gonna be recording it. In 1 minute, it's gonna download all the postures that this guy have done. Then it will allow to the expert of health and safety to recheck and to say, this I like it, this I don't like it, this I'm gonna change, to add comments, to so on. And in less than 1 minute, you have a report of 100 pages, but it's not just the report. The magic is to use the platform in itself, because we have systems of alarms and so on, notifications, so they can say, like there's a problem on this place, we have to fix it, we have to find a better way, or whatsoever. But really simple and very speed up. Here you put the data, it goes here, it shows you more or less, so different postures that you are doing. I don't know if this is working. Well, different postures that you are doing in this video, I don't know why. Is it not working? Well, as you see here, you have the different postures, then you can choose, you can change it, like different images and so on. And at the end of the day, once you finalize, you add comments if you want, you put documents and you download that document. They have, in this case, 212 pages, but it truly does like in 5 minutes, right? So at the end of the day, this also for reporting and for sending it outside and so on is really interesting. And least, but not last, or something like this, predicting and preventing risk, okay? And this is really interesting because this is what we were talking before, like how do I see this data? How do I show it, right? So it gets interesting. So here is like the platform of showing the data. And I would like to stop it if I can. Once we go inside, well, this is like double identification and so on, but like just 1 second here. Here at the very beginning, if you have seen here on top we have like on the Wall Street Journal, but with accidents, incidents, and so on, that it keeps on moving and it's adapted for each one of the companies that we have inside of the platform. So they can see, like, and they can choose which of these KPIs they want to have on the very top, and they keep on moving and so on. And you have like different ways of seeing it. Wait, sorry. How do I go? Okay. So here you have different ways of seeing it, very quickly. It have a ChatGPT integrated into the same platform. It's a ChatGPT because at the end of the day it's a model, but why it's helpful for, so I can ask, hey, I want to have data related to this. I want to see this graphic. I want to see this other graphic, and it's way easier. Like you can also go to each one of the models and to say, okay, I wanted to see it on the model in itself, or you can just ask a ChatGPT, make a chart of the accidents per day of the week. Here is thinking a little bit, and you have it here. And then you can, on top of this, change the chart, give me more information. But as I say, this is an extra tool just to make it easier whenever you are sitting and to make it more entertaining. So me, as a director of health and safety, I'm like, oh, I would like to know this question. And I don't have to go myself through the data. But like, since the data is already here, you can be asking him to do different changes and so on. Well, here you will have other stuff. Well, changing here to another sort of graphic. This is just like some sort of, or as a table or something like this, some sort of this. And here you can see it, for instance, if you want, also as the country. We work together with very big organizations, like, for instance, one of them is
Imagine
like
a workplace where...
One of them, sorry, my bad. See, one of them is like mutual insurance companies. This one is from Colombia. They have data regards of the whole country. We have another one in Chile. They have data regards of the whole country. So they want to see it as the country. So we have like given them different ways of seeing it. And one is so you can see the country and you can ask here in this case is like probably accents and so on, where are they focused? So, okay, well, so many of them, they are in Bogota, in the capital and so on. Like you can see, have different ways of seeing the whole data of the country in itself, because in this case, they are like getting all the data from the companies. And I'm so sorry because this keeps on happening. Well, here you have also integrated to the Power BI. So if you have your own Power BI and you want to use this data, we can like bring it to our platform and we can have it, but we can also have an integration to your Power BI. So instead of like using ours, so you can use yours. And here is just an example with the different things that we can be doing. Well, and here you have notas, comments, you can like add other people, you can have notifications, you can send them directly the report that you want through the platform so they can get to see this. Here is regards of the sensors that we have. It's a development that's called 70H1. So you have like that many sensors, that many alerts, and what is it happening regards of the noise, pressure, or so on. And here, last but not least, of how we see
Imagine a workplace where risks are seen before they happen.
Company of the
Where
future.
AI doesn't just report incidents, it prevents them. Our smart sensors collect real-time data. AI agents think faster than humans ever could, and predictive analytics turn insights into action. Sabentis transforms your environment into an expert watching, protecting, deciding every second. This isn't science fiction, it's already happening. Sabentis, the future of safety now.
Visit saventis.com and request your free demo. We create safe and healthy workplaces.
So that was pretty much it. Sorry, I tried to speed up because I'm really in a rush. I hope it understood everything. Like if you need any sort of information, I will be more than happy to show it to you. And also, like if some of you would like to have a free demo, you will just try the platform and so ever, I will also provide you that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo. So a couple of questions, if I may. So in using that platform, any company can come along and join it. Do they have to accept your categorization of accidents, of how they capture their data? You know, how do you make sure that there is a uniform consistency in order to be able to give that overall benchmarking view?
See, no, at the end, so the platform is really custom-made and it's like, it goes through models, right? But also if you have, like, as I showed before, if you have Power BI, if you have another way of capturing certain data, it's just like really easy to adapt it for us. So we can get it that way. Also, it's like for each one of the countries that we work on, because they have different laws and so on, like the main law of the country in itself is the very beginning of the platform. The platform, as I said, there's one to show the data for that matters, and the other one is in order to capture the data. The first one, like the one on regards of capturing the data, as I said, have like the understanding of the ISO law 45001, right? So when you have the plan, do, action, and so on, is divided on the different models. So it works like this.
Thank you. And from that similar kind of perspective, do you have different kinds of companies from different types of industry, and therefore, you know, your benchmarking is like for like. So if you're in retail, you can benchmark yourself against other retailers. Is that correct?
The idea is like we have around 150,000 companies. The idea is like you can benchmark to your, for instance, let's say I'm a big company that I'm in many places and I can want to benchmark Spain against Italy against. You can do so, or we can also give you the overall indicators that we have on regards like your. Because we have that many, we can categorize it. And you say, okay, we are in between 50 to 200 employees, and we are on the sector of this. So for this, we get all the data aggregated, and it gives us different indicators. And then you can have yours, and you can benchmark against them. That's another way.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I know that, Pablo, you have to dash off to another meeting now, so we better let you go. So one final round of appreciation for Pablo, please. Thank you.
Yes, we move on, and slight change. We move to the organizational level, and I warmly welcome Bernd Treichel on stage. Bernd is a senior technical specialist in prevention and social security. He works for ISA, the International Social Security Association. Been working in this area for more than 15 years, so quite experienced, amongst other things. Being a trainer, workshop facilitator, he is also a champion for the Vision Zero campaign. Welcome, Bernd. The floor is yours.
Yes, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. I know many of you had a long flight and might feel sleepy. Please don't fall asleep now. That would not be a good thing. I have a PowerPoint. Here it comes. The topic that I'm going to present is, of course, the more the global perspective of the OSH Metrics and what the International Social Security Association, the ISA, has done. You have heard it before. Vision Zero is something that is just circulating around here at the Expo. We also have a Vision Zero stand where you can get free pens, Vision Zero pens, just in case you want. Has nothing to do with OSH Metrics, but it's fun nonetheless, right? Why am I presenting Vision Zero when we talk about OSH Metrics and benchmarking and measuring? Well, it's pretty simple because we just heard from Rockwool that they have used these 7 golden rules and have just adjusted it a little bit to their needs, and that with the training program that they have developed, they can now take that to their different plants. I forgot, in what, 22 countries and 42, something like that, production sites. And so you can standardize basically this approach, just 7 simple rules, easy to remember, and yet very, very powerful if you want to improve occupational safety and health in your company or in your organization, or even at national level, believe it or not, because that happens too, that we have delegates from Senegal here, for example, and they have just started a national strategy in Senegal, all based on Vision Zero. So the whole country is vibing on Vision Zero. So, so these 7 golden rules, they come later again. We have talked about OSH metrics, but just as a little short reminder, you know, these are quantitative or qualitative indicators. The intention is, of course, to prevent accidents, and you do that by ensuring that you follow certain rules, that there is a certain level of compliance. And what we try to do with Vision Zero is we try to create a cultural shift. So it's like a paradigm shift that we say, instead of coming from top to the bottom, we also go bottom up, but it's more than that. It's just very organic. Everybody understands the rules. Everybody wants to come home safe and sound, and therefore everybody's following that. So it goes beyond just measuring. It's a behavior where you contribute to the well-being of the other person as well. And so that creates the culture shift. The way we do things around here, that's a definition of what culture means, very British, right? The way we do things around here, there are longer definitions as well, but this one I remembered, right? And so we try to change the way we do things around here just by creating a culture of caring for the other, but also in a very selfish way, caring for yourself. Because who is the person who has the accident, right? It's you. So you need to look after yourself. And then business impact, we have done studies that says that if you invest in prevention, you have a potential return of 2.2 or 2.3 for every yen or euro or dollar invested. And the culture shift in Vision Zero happens that the traditional approach is very much like, okay, we have an accident, we have a problem. Now it's costing us money. And, you know, in a way, it's a failure. The company has failed. And we're trying to change that by saying, no, the company hasn't failed. It's an opportunity for learning. Accidents happen. Even if we say we want 0 accidents, accidents happen. Statistically, it's not possible to have 0 accidents. So it's always a way towards improvement. And so, you know, it's a process, and most importantly, it's a commitment. So we try to let everybody own this process, not only the leader, every worker, every supplier, everyone who's somehow related. And that also includes family. Family is also very important, because if the breadwinner is all of a sudden no longer there, then who's feeding the family? So in that sense, this is how we try to change culture. And talking about indicators, we had the lagging and the leading indicators, and the lagging or reactive indicators. This is like how many accidents did we have, how many near misses, what is the lost time injury rate, etc. And here's just one example. What happened? BP had one of the worst environmental disasters ever on their plate. And they were just celebrating 10 years of zero lost time injuries, and they were celebrating. But what happened really is that they did not invest into a valve that cost $1 million, still a lot of money. But compared to what they had to pay afterwards, it was actually peanuts. They did an inspection, they realized that the valve might be faulty, they did not change it on time, and that then caused the accidents with not only injuries, but also fatalities. And this is just an example of what happens if you have a lagging indicator. It's not always reflecting the reality. Yeah, and so this is just to give you a little thing. And we are also in the race of indicators, because we have this absolutely beautiful brochure here. You can download it free of charge. If you Google Vision Zero, you will come to our website, visionsero.global, and from there's a wealth of materials that you can download, and you can work with that as you like. We have seen an example, for the first time I've seen it, because Vision Zero is just like I don't know how to say that, a magic box. There's always something else coming out. It's not only a white rabbit out of a head, but sometimes it's a mouse, sometimes it's a diamond. It's unbelievable. And so you can turn that also into something. For example, we've been to Pakistan in a company that produced footballs. And funnily enough, the company is called Vision. And they worked with Vision Zero. And we had a workshop, and all the workers for the first time in their life were actually allowed to speak up. And we had 7 stations, 1 for each of the golden rules. And then they could speak up, because the workers know what their workplace is like, and they know the risks. But the managers didn't know, and the managers spoke up because the workers didn't understand them. So it was a whole homogenic workshop, and it had a lot of benefits, just like as a side comment. But there are lots of things you can do with Vision Zero. And if you have multiple sites, you can really benchmark, and you can compare site performances with other site performances. And what we've done here, to come back more to the OSH metrics, is we had leadership, hazards, targets, system, equipment, qualification, and participation. And we broke it down into 2 indicators each. And because we work with safety, health, and well-being, we then developed fact sheets where these 3 elements are always included in all these indicators. And then the fact sheet, you see it at the bottom. Yeah, it didn't fit on the slide. Lars told me to reduce my slide, so I did. And then you can present the outcomes, and there are different ways of how to measure it, either through frequency in a percentage, is like, how often do safety briefings take place, for example. Oh yeah, okay, in a certain rate, we do it once a year, once a week, or whatever, based on the activities, maybe it's 2% or something, And you can also do it with yes and no questions, How important is safety, health, and well-being in your organization? Oh, sorry, I said how, that's wrong, But a yes and no question is like, is there safety, is there health, is there well-being? And so we do that for every indicator, so you have 14 of those, and then you can present it, and in the most sophisticated way, if you're a bigger organization, if you have more data, then you can also present that in a spider graph. Nowadays, now that I saw Pablo's presentation, you just plug it in ChatGPT and it will come up there. Yeah, but we are also working on an AI-powered solution to actually turn that into something more interactive right now, because it's actually quite a scientifically proven publication. We worked with researchers, senior researchers, and professors to actually come up with that. And it's really, really helpful. A lot of companies have done it, and we have received a lot of good feedback. Yeah. Now, just a couple of things about OSH measurements, the benefits, opportunities, and risks. This is now more or less the social part of my presentation. I just come out of one workshop where we talked a lot about the opportunities, that you can improve safety, that you can predict accidents, that it's all great and this and that. You can reduce costs. The more data you have, the better. You measure the worker, everything's fine. Yeah. And in a way, it's true. Here, the picture you see is a picture from Inail in Italy. They're an electricity company, also providing lots of services in Latin America. And here, they maintain their electricity grids. The worker used to be up there, and there were lots of accidents. Now it's a robot, and the worker is just steering the robot from the bottom. So there's still a worker. The worker did not lose the job, but the whole safety risk has been reduced to, I don't know, maybe 1% instead of 100%. Yeah. So, there are certain absolute amazing advantages by using AI and robotics. And when it comes to opportunities, there's this predictive analytics, which is very big. The workshop I attended, they had 2 case studies. It's basically the same idea. We try to look at company data and then identify the companies that are most at risk where the next accident could happen. So it's like an oracle. So AI is used to become a company oracle, and then they send, the AI is giving every Monday a suggestion to the labor inspector which companies he or she should visit. And then they do that. And then when they're on site, they use cameras, and AI through the cameras is also looking at all the possible risks. So it's a risk assessment tool at the same time. And then AI gives a proposed report. And the most important thing is it's only a proposal, because it's the labor inspector who still has to validate it, because they do not trust the machine intelligence. They trust their labor inspector's intelligence. But nonetheless, it reduces inspection time and the efficiency increased. And out of memory, I think it was 87% of the propositions of the AI were then actually validated by the labor inspectors. So the tool is already quite powerful. And this is certainly an advantage, because one of these statutory accident insurance, they have maybe 500 inspectors, but they have maybe 50,000 companies to inspect, maybe 150,000. So it's not possible to inspect them all. So they have a risk rating on that. And last but not least, risks. We had, in this workshop, we had a question of do you think that AI will steal your job? No. Nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks that. I have a son. He's trying to enter the labor market. Yes, AI is stealing his job. Yeah, but we are in jobs, so no. So there are risks for the future generation, I would say, and it's not only because I have a son, but because I care in general, for not only for the people who are in the work right now, but also for those who come next. And so there's another thing, which is negative algorithmic management. Algorithmic management is when the worker is totally monitored, and it's under the pretext that, then you're safe because there's a warning system. And then, if you move one step outside your safety zone, then you get an alert. Well, you start relying on that system instead of relying on your gut. And then with that, you don't develop, you basically use less your brain, and you trust technology more and more. And algorithmic management is also something, let's say you have Grab a Cab or Uber and you're a driver, and you get rewarded when you reach your target faster. So you might actually break traffic laws, but you might be rewarded by the algorithmic management. And if you are always the slowest, you know, there's a carrot and there's the stick approach. So, you know, there's just somebody in the algorithmic management data control center and says, the driver is too slow, is not good enough, is not delivering, back, you know, eject. And so they have all the data that you can imagine. And so you become more and more stressed because you are no longer really authentically managing your work process. And so that's just a small word of caution. And with this, I thank you for your attention. You want me to stay here? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bernd. Now I'm going through, I can hear it. Very inspiring and thoughtful, the last slides also about being aware of using AI in real-time measurements all the time, and focusing on, of course, we have talked a lot about focusing on behavior being important, but there's a concern that this overviewing people all the time is tricky, and have some psychosocial factors that we need to take into account as well. I was thinking about one of the questions we have in this part, who are demanding metric measurements? And then I thought about ISA being a large body. I think you have members in more than 100 countries around the world. Are you demanding metric measurements for your members?
We are not demanding that. I mean, the members are free to do whatever they want. You know, it's like it's a free market-based economy. But we have guidelines that we have developed, and it's not really, okay, well, we have this and we suggest it. So if they do it, it's great. But it's not compulsory in that sense. We also have guidelines for social security organizations or accident insurances, how to set up an accident insurance system that really helps the companies. So, for example, you know, one you could say an indicator is, do you have a prevention department? You know, how is this financed? Do you see this as a positive thing, or do you see it as a cost? Because if it's positive, you prevent accidents, so you save money. Or more specifically, like, do you have a medical prevention, a mobile medical prevention unit where you can test hearing loss or, you know, eyesight, etc. So these are suggestions, yeah, but it's not that we ask them to do that because it's their thing. But the good thing is, very often they do then what we suggest because it's good practice and it works in other countries. So then there's a ripple effect, and organizations that are not that advanced, they like it because they get inspired and then say, okay, we set up a prevention department and then we do this. And that changes the world slowly, day by day.
You mentioned a couple of times this guide on leading indicators. Yes. I like that a lot, and it's based on research. I know because the authors are safety science researchers who've done it. Yeah. Are you and you mentioned these accident insurance companies. Have you had a talk with them about not just focusing on lagging indicators in insurance policies when they have companies want to have an accident insurance, but also looking at if these companies have leading indicators as well in their measurements on accidents?
Yeah, maybe it wasn't clear enough at the presentation. These are all leading indicators,
yes,
right?
I know.
Yeah. So we've developed these 14 leading indicators, forward-looking. Just as I said, with a BP oil spill, you know, that was a lagging indicator and did not really reflect it. Yeah. But yeah, we are promoting leading indicators totally.
And you're talking with the accident insurance company as well?
Yeah, of course. We are, you know, whenever there is an event, we try to kind of promote that, yes.
You've seen the results in that way? You talk about this moving slowly?
Well, I would say, there is more and more data collection happening, and the results, they do not necessarily come to us, because then it stays with the accident insurances, and all of a sudden, a very advanced new model is coming up, just like the one that I presented with the good practices on AI and accident prediction, or also in the area of rehabilitation with exoskeletons, etc. So there's a lot of movement, and the results are slowly drizzling in, I would say.
It's good to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you, Bert. So now our last speaker today is Felix Oku. It's my pleasure to introduce Felix. He is a construction health and safety specialist. He is also a chartered professional member of the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management and the UK Society for the Environment. He has over 19 years of multi-sector work experience with multilateral development banks and international private consultancy and with the UK local government. So he's seen both sides of the tracks there with regulation and also with investment. His many years of practical experience that supports that include construction, safety risk assessments, audits, and developing site-specific and job-specific risk management plans. So thank you for joining us today, Felix, and over to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Duncan. And, Bernard said, don't try sleeping, because some of you have come all the way from Europe. And I can see if you notice, that's I don't know whether to call it a leading or lagging indicator, but that's going to be and then maybe my very first indicator is that I think I fit the height here, so I don't have to move the microphone. Brilliant. There's quite a lot that has been said. I come from a bank, so there's going to be a lot of overlaps with what the previous presentation has said. But we're a bank, we give out money. So if we give you money, I think you just go and do what you have to do and tell us how you spend the money. That's just what it is. No, there's nothing like a free lunch. And if it did happen like that, I wouldn't be here. There is Vision Zero. We call it Target Zero. Target Zero, and our shareholders who represent countries from all over the world don't want us to use such terminologies because they think it's very aspirational. Everything we put out on paper must be seen to be achievable. And that's sometimes the challenging environments that we find ourselves. I've been in the regulatory sector in the UK, and I know how that operates. It's much easier. When it sits down in a bank, it's much more different. And maybe I'll share some of those difficult challenges when it comes into how we help our borrowers and clients implement. A lot of these actions are not implemented by the banks. They're implemented by countries, we call them borrowers, and also corporate organizations or corporate entities that are large, multinational corporate entities that really borrow money from us, or we take equity shares in them, okay? So we don't think anybody needs to come to work and not have to go back to their families. And we're a development bank, we're not a commercial bank, so profit is not our primary objective. Let me make that very clear. We're here to set up development, make sure that people are alleviated from poverty, and we have shared outcomes. So we couldn't possibly be doing projects that will kill the very people who are beneficiaries of our project. That would be counterintuitive at all. Next up, how do we do this? We come out with standards. And for most of you that have been involved in any multilateral development bank or multilateral financing institution bank, we have a lot of requirements. So there is nothing like free lunch, as I mentioned. You come for $1, we give you a lot of requirements. And that's where we have leverage. So we set up these in standards. And the very latest standards that we're just launching out, this standard is really very, very new. It's going to be effective from 2026. It's what we call the environmental and social framework. And within it has 10 standards. Standard 1 is an overarching standard that looks at the relevance or applicability of the rest of the standards. But for our health and safety or occupational health and safety, there's 2 standards that are relevant. The Standard 2, which talks about labor and working conditions, and then Standard 4, which talks about health, safety, and security. And OSH is embedded in Standard 4, which is health, safety, and security. We extend our health and safety beyond just OSH, because when we're doing projects are near to surrounding communities. So our OSH is also extended to what we call community health and safety. The haulage truck that kills a community livestock, the haulage truck that kills a small person in the village, or the construction work that maybe sets up a pond and breed mosquitoes that infest people. So there's a lot more extension than just looking at workers. And in many cases, workers impact on communities. We've had workers being security forces that have been quite very aggressive and called fatalities in the communities. And we've had also workers that have, led to legacies that were not intended through what we call sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, not just within the workplace, but legacies in the workplace that we don't intend creating has been left by footprint. So we go a lot more than what you would talk here as your traditional indicators. I'm going to be quite very brief. So there are a lot of standards. This is just an overarching. I don't think you should read this because you're tired. Yeah. So this is meant for you to take home and then read for your weekend leisure. And if you need more, you could always come back to me. But I tell you again, in the objectives of each standard, they look very aspirational. And it's all hinged on prevention. We don't want this happening. We don't want that happening. But again, I've told you about the diversity of the clients that we deal with. So you can see it goes back all the way to dam safety, infrastructure safety, how to evacuate sites in terms of emergency preparedness and response planning. It's quite very comprehensive. So when you come for money from us, you'll be prepared because you have to do all of this in terms of development of several plans. And within a plan comes in indicators that you need to report to us based upon the risk that we assign to your project. So for some project, during construction phase, you're going to submit a lot of monitoring reports to us on a monthly basis. For some project, if it's a low risk, we may not want to hear from you till maybe 6 months or 1 year, when maybe you may have finished. Some projects also don't go according to plan, so project get closed early, and then we have to go into administration. What do we do with a project that is exposing communities to risk? So there is a health and safety management plan, and within it you can see the OHS, but there's also community health and safety, and there's security management plan. So we go a lot more further than what you have. Now, I thought I'd share with you some of the lagging and leading indicators we get. And I know there's been a lot of talk about it. Should we move away from this? Are they really effective? Are they giving us indications of the efficacy of things we want to measure on the side? There could be academic twist to it. But like Camilla's conclusion to it, we face reality, and we do get them all the time. In fact, as a bank, we've been queried by our shareholders, how many fatalities have happened on a project? This is what our shareholders, who are governors of the bank, who want to know. How many injuries have you had on your project? And I sit in the office being the focal person for health and safety, scratching my head. This is a lagging indicator. I'm trying to even educate our shareholders that we should push more for leading indicators, but this is what they want. And we get data. Now we're moving into big data using AI, as others have explained, to get this data, developing dynamic dashboards that make our shareholders see whenever someone dies on our project. It's not a good news, but this is what happens. So there is now a specific requirement that tells every borrower how long you need to notify us. And then when you've notified us, how long does it take to do a root cause analysis, and how long does it take to put a corrective action plan? Ben talked about insurance schemes. We're now promoting strongly, putting in compensation insurance scheme, worker either professional, and indemnity insurance schemes. So when people are severely injured or have gone through life-changing injuries and they can't perform their work well, how do you keep them going in terms of restoring their livelihoods? And that's one of the things we're doing. So these are some of the lead indicators that we're pushing more for. I'm not here to maybe tell you how maybe audits we've done to assess the efficacy of this, but I can see already some of the studies that have been done in the previous sessions, which I think you highlighted. I'm quite very interested in your presentation and see whether we could use that also to engage with the audience and tell them a better way of measuring in terms of key indicators. So bankers, and I thought this session, I joined this session, which was, should the same information be communicated to the same audience? That resonated very well with me, because the same information, when I have told bankers and investment officers that we had 2 people died, they will look, oh yeah, that's not too bad. The last project we did, we lost 15 people. So that's an improvement. Oh, no one died here, but we had a few injuries. Yes, when we did this project last year, 4 people died. So they're benchmarking on the very, very wrong because of the variety of the stakeholders that we got within the region. But when you tell bankers you monetize the same information, and I'm going to use the word, when you dollarize the same information, all of a sudden they wake up. They see dollar signs around it and they say, whoa, hang on, how are you saying? This goes all against our objectives in terms of development outcomes. Because when we do projects, we get the best economists in the world. And sorry if you're here and the economist, I don't hate you. But we get the best economists who tell you how this is going to result in outcome change in people's lives. It's always monetized. It's always dollarized. So if you bring that, and we were able to do some studies because we're really hitting a brick wall, trying to communicate with our senior management in terms of indicators and reporting. But this really worked. When we did a few research and we showed that for every dollar investment that we do, there is some huge, massive investment on return to 4 to 6 in workplace safety programs. So there is a strong push for investing positively in safety, if you really want. Not just doing infrastructure, but if we tell our borrowers and clients to invest a lot more in safety, and we'll be talking about sustainable infrastructure probably in the next 2 days, this will really, really come up. So, for instance, a study was done in the US, and I can present this, that says that 2 billion is lost each year as a result of worker injury and harm to health. I have the same information in terms of people that dies, and significantly in the Asian Pacific, but it doesn't resonate that well than if I say $2 billion is lost because of injuries and accidents. So that's something maybe probably you want to consider. We're looking also now developing knowledge products. This is one that we've had to publish because asbestos is such a big issue in Asian Pacific. We've got biggest manufacturers, biggest producers, and biggest users. And so we've been asked to do this. I thought I'd mention that. And if you go to ADB's webpage and you type it, it's a free document. You can have a look that we're proactively pushing. And if you can't download any free copy, please reach out to me. In the same light, last few years, we've been working among ourselves, the multilateral development institutions, and IOSH, actually. We collaborated quite very well on IOSH on this, that the world has now moved on from loss of limbs and injuries. Now looking at taking a holistic approach is quite very important. We're seeing a lot more accidents happen in the workplace because of mental health and psychosocial risk factors that have been ignored, right? And so we've moved on into that, and this year, EBRD has already gone and launched it. We'll be launching it in a month or two. There's a mental health and well-being guide that we've issued, which has been quite very well received. Even inside ADB, for us as workers, we're already applying some of these good practices, and it's showing some very, very good results. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Felix. So I just going back to your standards there for a second, the slide that you showed, there seemed to be, in my mind, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's an overlap with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Would that be true? Did you use that as part of that thought process?
That's a very good question, a good observation. So again, the SDGs are good plates. They will be the overarching strategic objectives. So they inform, but not in entirety, but they inform. And each of our standards, each of our action plans would, one way or the other, have pillars that pin to the SDGs. So that's right. But they don't translate in word to word. In terms of objective and aspirations, they align very, very strongly with the SDGs. And I can tell you which of the standards relate to what, if we have the information.
Yeah, thank you. I thought I spotted one or two there. The other thing that really interests me as well from the point of view of being a development bank, one would assume that you're not just focused on that particular project, but you're looking at the impact that project might have deeper into the economy of that country. So how does that inform your decision making as to what project you might go for? Do you actually start to think about how deeply your organization that wins the contract thinks about safety into their supply lines and in moving people perhaps from the informal economy to the formal economy? Are these the kind of considerations that you might make?
Absolutely. We look at a raft of considering factors, but maybe if I take you a step back. So we don't dictate to countries which areas they should be developing. Otherwise, then it looks quite very egalitarian in that concept. But we have what we call country partnership strategies with each of the countries that fall within our area. And that's a 4-year strategy. And within this 4-5-year strategy, they identify with us the areas that they want to borrow money for. So in some countries, we say in the next 5 years, we want to expand our health sector. Some will say we want to go to transport. Others will say we want to go into energy sector. So this 4-5-year plan has been agreed with us, and that goes across the board. Then within it, they can now come to us and call off projects. Right, so the energy sector, if within what we call the country partnership strategy, can now engage with ADB energy team and say, we would want to develop this project. And now we work with them and see which of the 10 standards are relevant for that project. If that project does not involve land acquisition, then for instance, our standard 5 does not come into the question at all. But the thing that is unique about OSH is nearly 99 or 100% of all projects that will be participating involve workers. Even when we give money to banks for the banks to do the work that we do, the banking staff are our first point of workers. So OSH is we say we use the word triggered, but we're not shooting no one. Or the OSH standard is triggered nearly for all the projects that we do, right? And then with that triggering of the standard, the next question comes, what are the risks or what are the hazards that these workers are going to be exposed to? Then we go into risk assessment, management planning. We would do all of this with the contractor that would implement this project has no idea what has already happened. Then after we've agreed, we signed a loan, the project or gets bid out, then the contractor then comes out of it. But when the contractor comes, he goes and look at the plans that and that's where your question comes in. And we look at a raft of issues. We're not looking at just do the infrastructure, but the difficulty we have is the variability in terms of quality. We're not dealing with our private sector clients. That's very easy. A lot of them are ascribed to gold international standards, so they come already with the international standards, and they're not difficult to tell them to stick to the international standards. But when you're dealing, Bernard mentioned Pakistan. I've just come from Pakistan, 4 or 5 countries. And okay, I can see someone smiling here. Maybe he comes from Pakistan. I have to be very careful. And then you have Pakistan, you have India, you got Thailand, you got Philippines. The standards of institutional bodies like the Labor Inspectorate, the Health and Safety Agency, because these are government agencies, they're so varied that now we have to look at what is the capacity of that institution? Maybe we should set up a dedicated desk within this institution using this project as a leverage to manage and improve. So we look at each project and see what could we possibly leverage on. And some even goes as far as in our Pacific countries, enacting specific legislation to drive health and safety in the country. So then when private sector comes in, then they can then leverage on that.
Thank you. So to bring it full circle and back to this particular session, so you mentioned that your investors are quite focused on lagging indicators and how difficult it is to shift them towards leading indicators. In the shift to leading indicators, is that are you using that to be able to engage them more fully in social sustainability ideas?
Yes, and that's one component, because the idea would be to use development outcome, which is a social sustainability drive, to use development outcome. Let's not use health and safety as a barrier, but let's use health and safety as an enabler to projects. And I think when you rephrase the language that way, that they see developing health and safety or developing OSH as a development outcome, then you have the investment officers. So it should be part of the development impact indicators. First of all, before you come to your lagging indicators, if you don't state that this project is looking to develop X number of units, recruit this type of consultants, and is part of the development outcomes, which would have to be reported on, then when you're pushing the client to do indicators, it's difficult. But because the indicators are part of the development outcome, the client forces the constructor and any supply chain person to feed into that information, so they will get information to do it. That is a culture shift. And there's been a lot of culture models that has been proposed here, which it looks quite interesting. That's a culture shift we're trying to push across. But again, I said it varies very differently. For our Pacific countries, we have countries, we call them fragile and conflict-affected countries, FCAS. There is pretty much nothing really, but life needs to go on. In those cases, you then have to take differentiated approaches to make sure they have the same in terms of support that they need from us.
Thank you very much, Felix. So please show your appreciation for Felix.
So we thought that it went so well with the interactive part with you, audience, in part one, that we have made 3 more questions for you we need your input and reflection on. I've heard something about jet lag, tiredness. It helps standing up, moving around if you are tired. So let me just tell you what the 3 question is. One of them is, why is data-driven decision making so important, and how does it impact on a company's performance and risk profile? And over here. Is there any evidence that large business in a global supply chain set exemplar standards of performance for the rest of the economies they operate in? So you have good examples in the supply chain in different industries. And the last one is, are there any benefits for companies to be more public, transparent with their health and safety performance? Can you see any benefits of being more transparent? So these are the 3 questions. We have 10 minutes. Please stand up and help us with some good inputs.
Interesting sessions. Razzmatazz.
So the 10 minutes is gone. Many of you have been standing up. That's nice, and there's been a lot of inputs and good answers, and that's great as well. So let me just have a look at some of the questions. Why is data-driven decisions making so important, and how does it impact companies' performance and risk profiles? There's a lot of good questions here. I think data provides a clear picture of current states. Without it, or without data, you're using assumptions. You can't manage what you can't measure. Data is gold. It helps communication a lot. And then finally, just remember that data is both quantitative as well as qualitative. Very important to point that out, I think, as well. And here was the question about the global supply chain. We are sure that there are, but cannot come with any examples right now. There's an example of auto organizations requiring ISO standards. This is typically requiring ISO standard down their supply chain. Sustainability, yes, they can use their excellent safety performance to scare away potential competitors. Another good question there. And finally, are there any benefits for companies to be more public, transparent? Yes. It could be used as marketing or to attract employees. At least in our part of the world, in Europe, this of attracting and retaining skilled employees is a huge issue. Yes, there's already companies that have a fight to get best employees, so somebody can rely to this. Better CSR, better ESG, and therefore more credibility. Yes, from my heart, but profit-driven companies will only publicize if required by the law or stock exchange requirements. So in some areas, there's still work to be done to be more transparent. But thank you very much, and I think I'll hand it over to Michelle to try to wrap up this session.
Thank you very much. Well, this has been a great session. Another outstanding panel. So thank you to Pablo, Bond, and Felix for your perspectives. I know I'm standing between you and the reception, so I will try to keep this very short. So to start off with, we heard from Pablo, who had to leave a little bit early. He talked a lot about AI and technology and the use of metrics and leading indicators. You know, I think the idea around the best data, providing the best action, providing the best result was a very good concept. He illustrated that quite well. And, you know, he also stressed the fact that we can do so much of what we've been doing manually. We can do it through AI and technology now. So, for example, collecting data, you know, and he discussed using sensors as the way to get the most accurate data and to have it real time and available immediately. And then using the data from those sensors to automate the analysis and being able to basically have it at your fingertips, where you can do a great deal of analysis from a ton of data from sensors that would take a great deal of time if we were doing it manually. And then finally moving from automating the analysis into the predicting and the preventing risk. So again, I think having this type of capability at your fingertips is really fantastic to think about. It's also a little scary, but how quickly you can get things and how detailed you can get them to help identify what actions you need to take. It's very interesting. Then we heard from Ben on more of a global perspective. So I really liked the discussion around the culture of caring. And I felt like the 7 golden rules that were within Vision Zero were almost like a blueprint for a mature organization on the Bradley curve. Thinking of things as a journey and the commitment that it takes to get there, and the integration of OSH with other functions within the company. It was almost, an ideal roadmap, which was really well done. He also touched on the fact that lagging indicators don't always reflect the reality. And I think the example that he used with the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster was a very good example of that. Everything seemed to be going great, about to celebrate a big milestone, and then, they had this tragic event. So we really have to think about what potentially can happen if we're just using the lagging indicators. He also shared the proactive leading indicators across the golden rules. I thought that was very helpful. And he touched on AI and predictive analytics as well. And I think the point that he made regarding the labor inspectors was a very good one, right? So, just as organizations can use this data, others can use it as well. And I think labor inspectors using predictive analytics to look at which organizations might be at the highest risk for a severe injury is a great use of that tool, right? And having fewer inspectors, but being able to get out there and use AI while on the inspections as well, just really helps to identify potential incidents before they occur. And then finally, Felix wrapped things up. I've got to say, I've never thought about how much a development bank or any bank would be looking into the safety of a project that's going on. So just blown away by the level of detail and the rigor that's included. I think there are a lot of organizations, companies, manufacturing, and others that don't go to the length that you're going to currently, and looking not just at the lagging indicators, but at the leading as well. And the fact that you're considering implications to the communities, et cetera, I think is just very impressive. Let's see. He mentioned that they are pushing investors more on the leading indicator side, which, again, I think is just very impressive. And I really liked the premise of safety culture as an investment. And, you're going to get out what you put in. And so I think for leadership, that's a really important fact to remember. I also love the fact that he ended on the good practice note on mental health and well-being. I think that's something that's going to become more and more important as we move forward, and I think it's fantastic that that's being considered already. So when I thought about what was common between these three panelists, there were three things that came to mind. The first is that indicators and metrics are important, period, right? Whether we're talking about lagging, whether we're talking about leading, whether we're talking about return on investment, or we're talking about performance, the data is important. Second is it's really crucial that we're very considerate about how we're integrating our leading indicators. So, the data, what we get out is only going to be as good as what we put in. So, each presenter talked about how using leading indicators could help get us to that next level. And then thirdly, we heard quite a bit from all three presenters on AI and how AI is being used to speed up the process from the data gathering to the data analytics to identifying what actions need to be taken to make improvements in the future. So well done, panelists. Really appreciate all of your content. Thank you.
I think that's it. That wraps it up for this afternoon. So I will see you all over at the reception for a glass of wine and a relax and to get to know one another better. So thank you very much to all of our speakers today, to our panelists, and to my colleague moderator, Lars here. And we'll see you soon.